Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Maisara binti Ahmad Nazari. My student ID is 2020-616-388.
My name is Siti Aisyah binti Ismail and my student ID is 2020-604-284.
My name is Nurin Husna binti Abdullah. My student ID is 2020849458.
My name is Putrin Alisha Irin binti Ramli. My student ID is 2020-89-16 and 68.
My name is Wan Sumayan binti Wan Usman. My student ID is 2020-481848. Today, we will be presenting about macroeconomic problems in United States effects of COVID-19 and how to overcome.
The United States is a North American country bordering the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The western part of the United States is mountainous, the central plains are vast, and the eastern part is low mountain with a diverse geographical environment. The system of government in the United States is a constitutional federal republic with a strong democratic tradition, which the president is the head of states and government. The United States has a complex mixed economy that combines individual freedom with centralized economic planning and government control. The Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation and the North American Free Trade both have the United States as a member. Unfortunately, there is a very dangerous virus called coronavirus that has hit the world, including the United States. The coronavirus 2019 is the most dangerous virus in the world. The outbreak started in Wuhan, China in December 2019. COVID-19 continued to spread around the world and gave a lot of negative impact to the whole country. The World Health Organization first classified COVID-19 as a global health emergency in January 2020 and officially designated the virus outbreak as a pandemic on March 11. By 2021, more than half of the population in each country will be subject to quarantine with strict controls to prevent the spread of the virus to everyone. This will cause the economy of a country to be affected by the lockdown. This virus had a significant impact on human health as well as global economic issues, notably in the United States. The pandemic has claimed lives, put burden on the healthcare system, and slowed worldwide economic growth. As of September 15, 2020, there have been over 6.5 million verified COVID-19 infections in the United States, with over 195,000 of deaths. Despite the health tragedy caused by the coronavirus, it is now widely acknowledged that the epidemic has caused the worst economic crisis since World War II. This economic recession occurred because the epidemic triggered demand shocks, supply shocks, and financial shocks. According to Census Bureau's forecast, the United States population will grow at a substantially slower rate in 2021 than in any other year since the country's establishment. According to another Census Bureau's analysis released on December 22nd, the population estimate for 2021 has increased by 392,665 persons, or less than 0.12% of the entire US population. For the first time since 1937, the US population has grown to less than 1 million people, marking the lowest population growth on record since at least 1900 years ago, when the Census Bureau began annual population estimates. As of December 1st, 2021, the total population of the United States is expected to reach 331,893,745 people, making it the third most populous country in the world after China and India, but ahead of Indonesia and Pakistan. The United States population has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has historically resulted in a low loss of foreign immigrant populations, declining birth rates, and increased deaths from the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only that, the COVID-19 is not the first one that affected the history of the population. According to the previous history, the population decline has also occurred before between 1918 until 1919 due to the Spanish influenza pandemic. At that time, it was said to be the slowest growth rate in the 20th century. Furthermore, the pattern of foreign immigration in and out of the US will decline significantly in 2021 due to travel restrictions imposed after the COVID-19 virus emerged. The land border between the United States, Mexico, and Canada has been closed since March 2020 and will be closed to all non-essential travel for the next 15 months. The US has also closed 3/4 of its foreign consulates, causing huge areas in issuing new visas upon arrival and accommodating fugitives.
Let's move on to the main economic sector. Before pandemic COVID-19, the United States had 5 industries that helped their economy to thrive. The first thing that helped the United States economy thrive is healthcare industry. Starting from the healthcare industry, it saved the United States from the financial crisis in 2008. As a result, 10 years since 2008, the industry has added 20% more jobs than the total economy. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the healthcare industry helped much faster than other economic sectors. It is because growing elderly population need the provision of the additional service. Second, the chronic element that plague an aging population are increasing the demand for healthcare workers. Third, the medical advance and improvement are increasing the number of range of employment unavailable. Furthermore, investor interest in healthcare and biotechnology stock continues to be strong. Next industry that helps the economy is the construction. The construction industry is a fast-growing industry because due to the inputs of population growth, they are increasing the demand for the buildings, roads, and other infrastructures. Therefore, the construction industry is considered a contributor to the economy of the United States of America. Moreover, the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that construction and extraction jobs will be grow 4% from 2019 to 2029, about as fast as the average for all jobs. The third industry that helps the United States economy is retail. According to the labor statistics, retail trade accounts for 5.5% of the nation's GDP and 9.6% of the total employment in the United States. Retail employs more than 1/4 of all Americans, or 5.2 million people according to the National Retail Federation. And because of the sector employment rate has climbed, merchants have less of a need to hire seasonal workers. The industry includes both online retailers like Amazon and brick-and-mortar stores like eBay. When comparing November and December 2018 to the same time last year, the National Retail Federation recorded a 4.1% increase in retail holiday sales. Next, technology sector. The technology sector is a large component of the United States economy. In 2019 to 2029, it has been predicted that employment in computer and information technology will grow by 11%, faster than the average for all the jobs. This is because people will use technology for their jobs and the job demand will be increased. For example, demand for more employees is driven by cloud computing, large data collecting and storage, and information security. Moreover, healthcare, transportation, and education are just some of the industries that use technology. Lastly, non-durable manufacturing also helps drive the economy in the United States. Fuel, electricity, and textile are examples of non-durable industrial production with a life expectancy of fewer than 3 years. Non-durable manufacturing is an important pillar in the United States, accounting for 4.8% of national GDP according to the Federal Reserve. Non-durable manufacturing is less valuable than durable manufacturing, but it employs more people and employs 4.4 million people versus 349,000 in durable manufacturing. According to the MAPI Foundation, as industrial productivity grows, yearly export growth will improve.
We will continue with the analysis of data. For the analysis of inflation, the impact of the economy, which has resulted in soaring inflation in this epidemic age, is not only limited to the United States. In general, inflation is described as a long-term increase in the price of goods and services. It is a measure of the worth of a country's currency. It means that if the price of product rises over time, the currency's worth decreases. Inflation happens when the consumer demand for goods or services exceeds the current supply of the country. Indeed, increased manufacturing costs such as raw materials, rent and other charges all contribute to the country's rising inflation rate. The United States used the Consumer Price Index (CPI) methodology. It is generally calculated using the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which shows changes in the price of products in a defined basket and services over time. The rate of change of the price index, as previously indicated, influences the rate of inflation. The index considers the cost of goods and services in cities and suburbs across the country, with each good or service being weighted according to its share of overall consumption. Food and housing, for example, are given a higher weighting in the index than apparel. Figure 1 shows inflation rate from January 2020 to December 2021. Annual inflation in the United States advanced from 6.8% in November 2021, the most since June 1982 and in line with projections, as measured by the Consumer Price Index (CPI). As global commodities rebound, rising demand, wage pressures, supply chain disruptions, and a low base impact from last year continue to push prices up, inflation remains above the Fed's 2% target for the 9th consecutive month. Some of the price rises reflect a rebound from the pandemic's abnormally low price levels in the early stages. For example, if the CPI had climbed at a rate near to the Federal Reserve target from the beginning of the epidemic through October 2020, the CPI annual inflation rate would have 5.1% over the previous year. That rate is still high, but it is 1 percentage point lower than the annual average. Next, for the analysis of unemployment, the unemployment rate is expressed as percentage of the total labor force that has no current job. The Bureau of Labor Statistics will update rates using establishment data and household surveys on a monthly basis to provide labor market statistics. A person is classified as unemployed if they were not employed during the survey's reference week and actively sought employment within the 4 weeks preceding the reference week and are presently available for work. The aftermath of this COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant influence on unemployment for every state and economic sector in the United States. It also resulted in the unemployment rate growing disproportionately among the sectors of the economy, which caused the economic slump. The COVID-19 pandemic clearly affected demographic groups differently. The unemployment rate was more clearly recorded because young people who had just finished their studies had to take a temporary break from the field of employment. Previously, people with lower educational attainment generally experienced relatively high unemployment rates. Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic restricting people to work clearly shows an increasing unemployment rate. Not only that, the decline in labor force participation throughout the pandemic was also recorded in total unemployment. Based on the graph above, the month of February in 2020 shows the lowest unemployment rate because that month is on the verge of economic recovery, and it can be said that labor demand is strong while the economy is slowly recovering in the job market. Starting in March 2020, the rate slowly changes into worse. With a high percentage of it shows that the employment rate with the highest rate observed since the data collection in 1948. As seen from the graph above, current unemployment is still rising and almost 3 times higher than before in February 2020, which represents the peak of the business cycle with the peak of employment. Then, in December 2020, the unemployment rate dropped to 6.3% as the US population returned to work. Further, in May 2020, a partial recovery began. Then, in June 2021, unemployment increased to 5.9% slowly, but only in a month. Further extended for the next few months, the graph shows the unemployment percentage has decreased.
So now, let's move on to the next part, which is how to overcome the problems. So, let's see how the government solve the problems. So the first problem is inflation. There are 3 steps how government take over. The first way is wage and price controls can be used by government to fight inflation. In economics, income policy is a broad-based wage and price limit that is frequently enacted in response to inflation, with the goal of keeping wages and prices below free market levels. Wage and price controls were initially successful, but were weakened in January 1973 and later abolished because they had no effect on inflation. Some economists believe that a reasonable income approach will help in keeping inflation at bay. So, the second way is a contractionary monetary policy is a prominent approach to reducing inflation. A contractionary policy seeks to shrink an economy's money supply through lowering bond prices and raising interest rates. This helps to minimize spending because when there is less money to go around, people will have it choose to keep and preserve it rather than spend it. It also implies that there is less financing accessible, which might lead to less expenditure. Spending cuts are significant during an inflationary period because they assist to slow economic growth and, as a result, the pace of inflation. A contractionary approach may be carried out using 3 main techniques. For example, the central bank might raise interest rates. The Federal Reserve, in the case of the United States, is in charge of this. The last way is the fiscal strategy is the use of government consumption and tax collection to change the long-term course of the economy. In December 2020, Congress passed the Consolidated Appropriation Act, which included a $900 billion increase program to assist those affected by the disease. President Trump and Vice President Biden, as well as other presidential branch office, issued a flurry of executive orders to assist individuals affected by the pandemic at this time. President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan, a $1.9 million improvement plan, into law on March 11, 2021.
Next, we move to the ways to overcome unemployment. There have 3 points. Okay, for the first point, which is recreate jobs through targeted redeployment and reskilling. The government must protect and recreate jobs through targeted redeployment and reskilling. Technological progress was expected to result in a huge shift in demand for particular roles in the workforce. To combat unemployment, the government could use online talent exchange to create transparency on job openings and facilitate redeployment, transparency about changing demand, expand job opportunities, and information about existing skills that may be underutilized, as well as better, faster matching between job seekers and employers are all urgently needed. Okay, we move to second point, which is unemployment protection. The government has the authority to enact fiscal policies that reduce total unemployment while also assisting unemployed people to avoid falling into poverty. One common policy used to assist the unemployed is to provide them with direct income support. Besides, the government can also provide financial assistance to their communities on a monthly basis. Next, we move to the last point, which is education funding. Education funding is also an excellent way to overcome unemployment. $1 billion spent on teacher recruiting generates $1.3 billion in economic benefits. People with a higher education are more likely to find better paying professions. They may be able to buy more things when their salary rises. Defense spending pales in comparison compared to expenditure on education. More finances are required for defense. In conclusion, the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a toll on the state in many aspects and was unprecedented. One of these features is that the inflation started to decline from January 2020 and was at the lowest in May 2020, as the consumers started to change their spending patterns dramatically because of COVID-19, stay-at-home orders, and behavioral changes associated with social distancing. We believe that one of the main reasons for these widespread differences over inflation expectations is the disparity in consumer experience with prices during this time period. The analysis of unemployment also shows that it began to rise during March 2020 and slowly declined over time. Most of the people were unable to work due to the lost business when the pandemic strikes.